The death of the Soul King. It just sounds like a big deal, and these chapters and episodes make sure that it is, that we really feel the gravity of that very real, impending possibility. The whole Bleach universe is physically reeling from this as tremors are felt all over the place, including in the living world in Karakura Town. We're told that the Soul King is the linchpin between the three worlds, holding reality together, and seeing Karakura Town be affected by an assassination happening in a different dimension really drives that home. But I'm really gonna need Ishin to show up to help soon, by the way. We need all hands on deck, and there's a chance to face the guy really responsible for Misaki's death. Also, Tatsuki, my girl, now is the time to reveal your powers that I want you to have. We're probably past the point where that can happen, but let me dream a little longer. But yeah, after Yuabaha stabbed the Soul King in his crystal, things really aren't looking good, even as Ichigo arrives to try to save the day. As I talked about at the end of my last video, there's something so scary about the antagonist seeming to have already succeeded before our hero even gets a chance to try to stop him, and that carries over here. Ichigo and the others arrive to find that the Soul King's already been stabbed, that they're too late. And I've got to give the anime a shout out for giving Ichigo and Yuabaha this big fight that takes place all over the palace and on different islands, and it wasn't just a cool addition to watch, but really built up the reveal to Ichigo that the Soul King's already been stabbed. Prolonging that a little more just made it hit even harder because we see his effort, we see that he's really trying. But I was shocked when I realized just how much of that was added. This wasn't an extended fight, it was an entirely new confrontation pretty much. Yeah, this is crazy, guys, this is crazy. They go, "We came to stop you." 2 page flips later, Ichigo is attacking the Soul King because he's controlled by the blood. So that episode, that really expanded. Given last video and what I saw in these episodes, I know I'm going to be talking more and more about interesting diversions that the anime takes from the source material going forward, and this was another really great one. Some might write it off as just an extra fight scene that's unnecessary, but it really did help with the desperation of the moment, beyond being this awesome spectacle, which it was. I hope those guys that worked for Cringy on the spa island are doing okay. It's the last flicker of hope before things get even worse when Ichigo tries to pull the sword from the Soul King, but then suddenly can't help but attack him even more, cutting him completely in half. Ichigo's Quincy blood reacting to the Soul King that way was a scary moment that really showed just how ingrained this generational trauma was, or perhaps how deep Yuabaha's hatred for his father really goes, that even his blood within others boils at the sight of the Soul King. And it emphasizes the instinctive bond that Yuabaha has with his Quincy's. In some ways, they are extensions of his will and of his power. He can give them the power, he can take it away, and apparently they can do things without realizing it because it's what Yuabaha wants to happen. It's actually a pretty twisted moment because of what it does to Ichigo. He's obviously a character that focuses on protecting his loved ones and isn't subservient to anyone, only to have all of his own agency and autonomy taken from him from within as he's forced to kill the Soul King and put everyone in danger. Against his will, this part of him turns him into someone that endangers the people he cares about instead of defending them. Like, he's made so much progress in controlling different aspects of himself and kind of really reeling in all of the things that would have been a threat inside of him before, but he has yet to master this Quincy bond that he has with Yuabaha. The anime brought up that the Soul King needed to be struck down by someone that was like a bit of everything, you know, Soul Reaper, Quincy, Hollow, and even Fullbringer was mentioned. It helps make it clear why Yuabaha wanted Ichigo specifically, and apparently orchestrated this whole thing because he knew how it would end thanks to his foresight with the Almighty. It's a little dangerous having the villain make one of these claims again after Aizen also said that he manipulated Ichigo the whole time, but I think Kubo treads it carefully enough. It helps that Yuabaha literally can see futures. Our boy has gotta stop being manipulated by the main villains. Hell, even Ginjo, on a much smaller scale, tricked Ichigo into doing what he wanted the whole time. But through this literal control in his Quincy blood, Ichigo straight up hacks the Soul King apart, and things naturally only get worse from there. The one that steps up and attempts to fix this apocalyptic event is someone I really didn't expect to see take the spotlight, and that is the ever-sickly Jushiro Ukitake. But I'm so glad it was him. Ukitake is someone that I've always liked, but never really came close to my absolute favorite characters, you know? He's a good dude, he's kind and understanding and helpful, and I've always wanted to see more of him and learn more about him, but the series hadn't given that opportunity. Hell, he's barely been in any fights, though there's been obviously good reason for his lack of participation. The most interesting thing about Ukitake has always been his mysterious chronic illness that he has to deal with, and we finally get some answers about that, and they weren't exactly what I was expecting. I thought this man just had like soul tuberculosis or something, but it's much more complicated than that. Ukitake has been sick most of his life, but his lung disease is being held at bay by a divine cosmic being called Mimi Hagi that has taken up residence in his body ever since he was a child, and his parents prayed for Mimi Hagi to heal him. And while he wasn't brought back to like the pinnacle of health, obviously, considering everything we've ever known about him, Mimi Hagi did stop his sickness from getting worse, or at least slowed it down maybe. But yes, Mimi Hagi is a god, and my initial feeling was that it felt a little late in the series to suddenly be introducing the idea that there are other spiritual deities in this universe, but that was almost immediately addressed when it was tied to the Soul King, because it turns out Mimi Hagi is just the right arm of the Soul King. Okay, confession, an embarrassing confession. In the few times that we saw the Soul King, including recently, I had never noticed that he was missing his arms during my initial readings of those chapters. Not once, and I felt like an idiot when I realized it. It's so obvious, but I don't know. I guess they just blended in with the crystal or something, but it's funny how some things don't register until they have to be pointed out. Like, I'm reading this series with a bit of an analytical lens, you know, and I still didn't notice. So, yeah. But it makes sense with what the anime hinted was done to him that we talked about last video, that he might have been mutilated and forced into the crystal, forced to serve as the linchpin for the universe. Not only that, the anime editions in these episodes brought up how each of the arms of the Soul King represents something different. The right arm, Mimi Hagi, represents stillness, so that could be part of making Ukitake's lung disease stop and calms the tremors going on in the universe later, while the left arm of the Soul King represents advancement, and I'm very curious about that. I assume the left arm separated and became its own thing just like Mimi Hagi, so maybe someone has the left arm within them? Was that what Ichibei had in the anime flashback at the Peace Summit? It could be, but he apparently lost that power then, or it got sealed, and no one else really springs to mind that might have it. I was thinking though that maybe the Hogyaku has something to do with it, since that was like advancing things beyond their natural point, but I don't know. That's just a theory of mine that's probably not right, but I kinda like it. Urahara and Aizen both worked on the Hogyaku, and they both have apparently seen the Soul King's appearance somehow, so it could be, maybe that's the connection, maybe it's somehow the power within the Hogyaku utilized the advancement power of the left arm, I don't know. These Soul King arms being their own things and representing different aspects made me think of the vibe difference between Master Hand and Crazy Hand and Super Smash Bros, by the way. They had their own individual personalities and styles, and that's where my mind went. Here are my Smash mains, come fight me. So Ukitake releases Mimi Hagi from inside his body and tries to replace the Soul King with a stray piece of him, something that shocks Yuabaha, which was fun to see. Right as his plan is going pretty well, there's like this unforeseen wrench thrown into his plans for a minute or two. That mysterious ritual Ukitake was doing during the invasion is called the Kamikake and is used to spread Mimi Hagi, which has been in his lungs, through the rest of his body, essentially turning Ukitake into like a complete vessel for the Soul King's power. And at first, Ukitake is successful. He stops the tremors and stabilizes the universe. All of this is fitting for Ukitake's general style too, taking in another's power and redirecting it for his own purpose. I like that a lot, and just the idea that this one man, someone who has kind of had to sit on the sidelines because of his health, one man is holding all of reality together. It's insane. I love it. The actual process as Mimihagi flows out of his body and pours out of his orifices looks really taxing and painful, and what helped to really emphasize that was seeing all of the other Soul Reapers in the room react to it. It was especially effective with Rukia there, because we've seen some of the trauma that her and Ukitake have gone through together and the presence that he had in her life. The only thing that might have made it even more tragic is if Shunsui was present, because that's his boy, his best friend, and I can't help but think that part of the head captain didn't want to have to see Ukitake go through that. We know he knew about Mimihagi and the Kamakake because of their last scene together, but yeah, the closeness of that friendship would have made it even worse if Shunsui was there to see him go through this. In general, Ukitake is a character that's very heavily defined by his relationships with others. He's been a support to a lot of different characters, and even in the Lost Agent arc was kind of shown in potentially a shady way as far as, his relationship with the previous Substitute Soul Reaper, but I'd love to see that expanded on sometime. Knowing Ukitake, I'm sure his intentions were good. I really, really loved the extended flashback that the anime gave for him, showing Mimihagi saving Ukitake as a child, and then different points of his life. The life he wouldn't have had if not for the power of the Soul King that he's had inside him this whole time. It was great diving into his character, because I always thought he needed more focus, and now he's finally getting it when it seems his time's coming to an end. There was even this really small cryptic moment between him and Unohana that really caught my attention. It took place more recently after the first invasion and before Unohana's death, where she knows what's about to happen to her. Her face is already resigned to look like Retsu. I love that visual indicator that she's kind of her old self. So she knows what's about to happen with her and Kenpachi, and he's about to go do the ritual of Kamakake, so he also kind of knows what he might have to do. And they both are kind of resigned to that. And there's this fascinating moment where they say that they'll see each other again soon. And that's pretty foreboding considering what's happened to her and what's happening to him, and also got me thinking about what happens to Soul Reapers when they die. Where do they go? Do they have their own afterlife for the afterlife? Do they all become part of the same energy like the Force? Do they all become Reishi? Or are they just gone completely, and they mean they're gonna see each other again in death, just that they're gonna both be gone to the same place? I don't know, but this really makes it seem that Ukitake most likely isn't surviving, but he seems content with that, because he owes the Soul King for him having a life at all. Like, this is a sacrifice he always knew he might have to make. I am curious how many people really knew about Mimihagi and the Kamakake and the truth of Ukitake's condition. Obviously Shunsui did, but did someone like Head Captain Yamamoto? I also loved that Urahara knew nothing about the Kamakake. Having something that someone as knowledgeable as him doesn't know about just helps show how truly mysterious that thing is. Also, side note, my friend told me to reread the scene when Aizen ascended at the end of the Soul Society arc. I was told to pay special attention to who Kubo drew and wanted to draw attention to in that moment. And that's when I noticed that when this line was being spoken, Kubo very intentionally showed Ukitake while it was said. That's some amazing foreshadowing there, and I love it that they're talking about the power of the gods, and there's Ukitake, who has the Soul King's power inside of him. So I wonder if Aizen knew. He probably did. He's Aizen. Speaking of Aizen, he's being freed. Yeah, and I'm hoping he's either gonna be a big help or end up retaking his role as the true villain of Bleach. I'll dive more into that in another video when we see the follow-up to this, because naturally this is no doubt gonna bring a lot of drama. It has to. Back to Ukitake. His condition coming to a head feels like one of those big payoff moments at this point, because it's been this lingering thing with his character for as long as we've known him. I love when series finally touch on long-standing threads like that to finally give us some answers before the end. One thing really struck me when they talked about Ukitake's true power. Apparently, he has an insane amount of spiritual pressure, even in comparison to other captains, but that potential is held back by his illness. So if he wasn't sick, what are we talking here? Is he like Zaraki level? Yamamoto? I think of Ukitake and Shunsui kind of being on a similar playing field right now, but maybe that's just because they get put together as a duo sometimes. It's hard to say, but I loved the notion that Ukitake is actually inherently maybe one of the most powerful characters, but due to circumstances outside of his control, he can't really show it. But I love it because he's just so unassuming and reasonable, and the fact that he has this extreme extreme power but doesn't use it is just perfect. He's one of those kinds of characters that's already strong but would apparently be a whole other level if not for a debilitating condition and the thing keeping him alive, and that's always an interesting dynamic. Ukitake seems to be making the ultimate sacrifice here, and you've really got to respect it. Like I said, I've been waiting for him to become relevant and have the spotlight, and now he has it, but in a really unexpected way, which is great. While I would have loved to have seen him have a big fight, and I would still love to see what his Bankai's like, this feels so true to who Ukitake has been in the series. He's not a character that's defined by his combat prowess, but instead one who has always been shown to do whatever he has to, and whatever he is capable of in the moment to try to help others. Even if it puts himself in jeopardy, he does what he can because he cares, and Ukitake's selflessness helps stop the universe from completely falling apart, at least for the time being. If this does kill him, and I assume it will, this is a really powerful end for his character. Even if this isn't a permanent fix, and I don't think it is. It's the effort that's so admirable. Ukitake was always just a good dude, and here at his potential end, he still is. All of this, by the way, seems like only a temporary solution, like a band-aid over an open wound, since the Soul Reapers need time to make a gate to the Soul King's palace, and there was a lot of interesting moments between our survivors here as we learned about how this might be possible. I loved Urahara and Mayuri working together to figure the gate out. This war would already have been lost a while ago if we didn't have the Science Bros. I also really loved the moment where Nanao, of all people, convinced a recovering Kenpachi to stay. Nanao has been the least aggressive, most level-headed person in the series whose skill is in creating defensive barriers, and she stands up to Kenny, and he backs down. Such a good moment, really powerful, I like that a lot. Considering I'm still grieving the deaths of two of their members and have been wanting to see the others, I really love the Visored coming back. It was nice learning that what they've been doing with those reality tears off-panel is going to help everyone get to the palace. It makes them an integral part of all of this, even though they haven't really shown up much in this final arc. But I especially loved the big emotional beat that the Visored got when they were truly invited back and given a chance to put their old Soul Reaper robes back on. That was powerful as hell considering their history. Yes, we had 3 of the Visored already rejoin the ranks, but we didn't get to see the internal turmoil that they would naturally have once they were back, and this gave us a bit of that, which was nice and something I really want to see, so I'm glad I'm getting to see it in some capacity. Kubo tells us so much in these expressions, the pain of everything that they went through and lost when they had their lives turned upside down and were declared enemies by their old comrades. The awkwardness and the discomfort in going back to that life and to standing side by side with those same people, donning those robes after 100 years of exile. It was so well handled for such a small part of these chapters, and I loved it. But yeah, the big plan is to gather everyone and storm the palace. It seems a little too straightforward and probably an easy way to get killed, and it might not work out very well, but it's exciting and hype, so I say let's do it. Uryu arriving and protecting his Quincy King was quite the entrance, and it brought all of the drama I was hoping for, especially in the anime's version, but more on that in a second. I've been saying since I first started this arc that there's so much potential to build up to an Ichigo and Uryu confrontation because of the natural conflict this storyline would give them, which was only made more interesting once we learned that Ichigo is also a Quincy, that Uryu doesn't have to be with these people because there is another Quincy that he could connect with and already has connected with. That inevitable collision between the two of them is something that's been teased here and there, especially when Ichigo first saw Uryu with the enemy, and also as the friends were all contemplating what will happen when they see Uryu again. And back then I loved that Ichigo was insistent that they would beat some sense into Uryu. So we know where Ichigo stands, we know how he feels about this, we're still kind of in the dark about Uryu's true intentions, but that's effective because Ichigo's just as in the dark. It was just all super effective in setting up this clash. And this fight, especially again in the anime, was so good. I keep saying it, but the anime really capitalized on those moments and added more to it, continuing to make so many improvements with anything that has anything to do with Uryu. I'm so glad that Kubo seemed to regret the manga's lack of his character, when Uryu is such a natural anchor point for drama and tension between major characters. Like, the manga didn't even have the moment when Uryu saw Ichigo's blue and seemed to realize he's a Quincy. That's a pretty massive thing that should absolutely be touched on, and I'm glad the anime is giving it, and giving Uryu so much focus, including his capabilities. We saw hints of it against Senjumaru, but now we're seeing that potential fully come to fruition. I was shocked when the anime had him fully show his Volsterndish against Ichigo and made the whole encounter so much more epic and dramatic than it was on the page, because that's what this long-awaited confrontation really deserves. It should feel big, it should feel desperate, it should feel tragic, it just should feel awesome. And seeing Uryu's full transformation just seems like a no-brainer, a payoff to the fact that we've seen so many other Quincy's show their reishi wings. It's shocking that this didn't happen this way in the manga, at least not yet. If you're gonna give every other Quincy this form, how can you not show us what our OG Quincy looks like with his Volsterndish? It just makes sense. It felt like you were naturally saving it for this moment. Besides, the whole concept of this was originally introduced with that proto-Volsterndish form Uryu used in the Soul Society arc with like the one wing. As far as the transformation itself, it's sleek as hell, and I love the way the arrows work. It's just deadly and efficient, but it's also beautiful and angelic as it should be. Is there a reason he doesn't have a halo, by the way? I'm pretty sure every other Volsterndish does. Maybe because it's so new for him, or maybe it's because he's not a pureblood Quincy. I don't know. It was especially so much more powerful in the anime's version to see Uryu seemingly kill Ichigo rather than in the manga's version where he just destroyed his footing to make him fall. I think it's a ruse to throw off the scent and that he's actually working against Yuabaha. I still believe that, but it was much more dramatic and convincing this way to really show him seemingly kill their enemy. Plus, it was just shocking to see how different it was for me as an audience member, but I loved that change. I really do think he's still plotting against Yuabaha. A lot of times in stories, a friend that seems like a traitor is just trying to really sell the betrayal like this. And there were some little hints here, like the fact that he didn't want the other Royal Guard members to interfere. He wanted to be the one to do it and be in control of the situation, and instead of killing Ichigo straight up like the others no doubt would have tried to do, he just made him fall. In the manga especially, he just went for a come off the platform. Another sign that he didn't want Ichigo actually dead, and I'm sure his shot was, he's got good aim. In the anime, his shot, I'm sure, didn't actually kill Ichigo. He's trying to make it convincing, and a guy like Gerard Valkyrie is immediately convinced because, meathead. But Liege Baro seems more skeptical, and Haschwald has seemed suspicious of Uryu, like, for a long time now, so we'll see. It just feels like Uryu's actually doing what he can to help his old friends and saving their lives in a way. Because it was becoming increasingly clear that they weren't going to be able to stop Yuabaha in this moment. Hell, even Ichibei was talking to himself like, yeah, you guys won't actually be able to pull this off. So Uryu may have just rescued them all, while making it seem like he was trying to get rid of them. I hope that's right. It feels right to me with everything we've seen. It just feels like, especially the potential motivation of what happened with Uryu's mother, trying to destroy the Vandenreich and Yuabaha from the inside. Ukitake offered a momentary flicker of hope, and so did Ichigo when he seemed like he was about to take on Yuabaha. Just momentary attempts to keep the flame lit before our hero's efforts are snuffed out. Yuabaha absorbs the Soul King power along with Mimihagi, which seems really bad, and I'm sure that isn't going to end well for anyone, but especially for Ukitake. So there have been a few moments of relief in this last chunk of the story, but things have only gotten worse really, so yeah, this isn't looking good, but it's great for my anticipation and my excitement to see how the hell we're going to somehow fix all of this, because I don't know how we do it. Uryu's gotta come through. He's gotta. Well, that's it for now. As always, thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you want to see more of my thoughts on Bleach, I have hours of content with the manga read-along and anime reactions to episodes, as well as a few other anime and manga on the Patreon, so go there if you want to see more. Hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye.